Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Friday, August 14th. This is your daily Buckeye Fix. I'm Tom Orr. Congratulations, you have successfully made it through to the final workday of the longest week in college football history. We did it, fam. And as has been the case all week long, there's a ton to talk about this morning, so let's just get right to it. I'm joined by Buckeye Scoop beat reporter Tony Gerdeman. We recorded an episode of Buckeye Weekly yesterday afternoon, and as we openly speculated on during that show, more news broke as soon as we stopped recording. Tony, this was definitely not a complete shock, but it sounds like Shaun Wade has played his last snap as a Buckeye.
Yeah, I guess with ESPN's Marty Smith was doing a podcast with Shaun's dad, Randy, and at that point, Marty asked Randy what about Ryan Day's January proposal for football, and Randy said that wouldn't be an option for Shaun, and that if that is the way things turn out, where Ohio State does not play in the fall, and as we've been saying every day since about Monday or so, or Tuesday, that so there will be no fall football. There will be no apparently Shaun Wade in the fall either, and then also no Shaun Wade in the winter, according to his dad via that podcast. So no, not a surprise, because we've talked, everybody has talked about the fact that if you are a top level NFL draft pick playing in the spring, even if it's the winter, from January to the beginning or middle of March, probably not in your best interest. And I know with the health concerns going on around the sport, that playing for free is not as enticing as playing for money.
It seems like it probably has been true for actually a good chunk of the sport's history, but maybe especially now. There are a bunch of other Buckeyes who might still play if there is a spring season, but who likely won't be if the next game is sometime in the fall of 2021. Justin Fields, Wyatt Davis, Josh Myers. We're supposed to be getting a chance to talk to at least one of those guys early next week, so you can keep an eye out for that. That'll be an interesting conversation. The next question, though, is whether there's going to be a spring season at all and what that could look like. Ryan Day shared the basics of his vision for a season that started in January. And then Thursday, Albert Breer from I don't think he's on the NFL Network anymore, but he's
Sports Illustrated.
Sports Illustrated now, yes. And he is very plugged in with the league and an Ohio State guy as well. So he kind of laid out the rest of Ryan Day's plan. And, honestly, I'm not sure exactly how realistic it is, but it sounds absolutely awesome. The first games for the Big Ten and Pac-12 and potentially other conferences, January 1st. How would that be to start your 2021 with the start of a new college football season? I can't see you right now, but you're smiling just thinking about it. I can tell. Tony, can you run everyone through kind of what that might look like, that kind of season, if they do start January 1st and it's sort of a shortened season? Can you just kind of run through like what that Ryan Day type plan might look like for the spring?
Yeah, it would be an 8-game conference season with a conference title game. Now, whether you probably wouldn't have divisions at that point, but it would start January 1st, end the end of February, January 1st, and then 8 weeks or 9 weeks later, you probably have one bye week in there. So the regular season would end in 9 weeks. I'm going to imagine you're talking about off-site domes just to be safe, because the weather, last winter we had a mild winter, which means we are due for 8 straight non-mild winters, according to the old Farmer's Almanac in my mind. So there would probably be, you've got Minnesota, you've got Indianapolis, you've got Detroit, St. Louis. There are areas that the Big Ten footprint exists where these domes are. So I think that would be involved there. He was proposing this as the NFL is also kind of in favor of it, because it would allow more tape on all of these players, any players that would choose to participate. And that the way he couched it and the way he presented it was like the NFL was kind of in favor of this, that they would like this, and it would give them an opportunity to see more players. And I reached out to one NFL scout, and he's like, nobody in the top 3 or 4 rounds is going to be playing that, in that winter anyway, because they wouldn't want to play in that and then either go play a season in the NFL or play in that and then get injured in that in preparation for their fall season in college football. But that's, that was just one person. I'm sure Albert Breer talked to more.
Quite possibly. And there's a whole bunch that goes into making that happen. I mean, there would be a whole lot that would have to get sorted out in the next 4 months in order to be ready to have less than 4 months at this point to be able to start a camp in time to be ready to go for the winter. I mean, there's going to be a lot that hinges on testing. Is testing now cheaper, faster, more accurate? Maybe. Is a vaccine out? That may, that sounds like that's probably a little further out, but it sounds like some of the potential side effects of COVID that, on the heart recently may have impacted some of the conference's decisions. Is there news on something else with that, either good or bad, that could sway that? I mean, is the NFL on board with that? Our conference is comfortable with the protocols and the liability. I mean, there's a lot that has to get sorted out in that next 3 to 4 months. And hopefully those conferences are working on that right now, because the clock is ticking. Purdue's Jeff Brohm had his own plan, which was kind of interesting. Ryan Day's plan starts January 1st. It sure seemed like it was as aimed at, let's make this happen as early as possible and keep all those NFL guys around for another year, because Ryan Day was not real subtle about the fact that Ryan Day thinks he's got a pretty darn good team this year. So he wants to keep all those guys around if he can. Jeff Brohm, that's probably a little bit less of a concern, especially now that Rondale Moore has already opted out. So his plan starts a little later. That gives everyone a little more time to sort things out and, do some of the stuff we just talked about, develop protocols, maybe have faster, cheaper, better tests available. But it also means they probably have to push the 2021 season back a little as well, which is, that's probably not ideal, especially if it is just the Big Ten and Pac-12 playing.
Yeah, and you're right. Once Jeff Brohm saw Rondale Moore leave early, he probably knew they weren't going to win a national title. And so it didn't become that wasn't a priority for them anymore. I just think once you're interfering with 2 seasons, you're asking an awful lot. And sure, it would be fun to have all of those games in 1 year. I don't know how safe and viable it is. 2 playoffs in 1 year, 2 16 playoffs, and one in the spring, one in the fall. Sounds pretty fun. And if the fall season was 10 regular season games, which is what he was suggesting, I think 8 in the spring and 10 in the fall, we've seen teams play 15 in the span of 3.5, 4 months currently. So is 18, 19, 20 in the span of, from February to January, 11 months. That sounds crazy, but it's a lot of games over a long stretch of time. I don't think people will want to affect 2 seasons, but who knows if there's a viable spring football. I'm not even going to get into whether or not we're going to be able to play next year, just based on what has been fixed and where the liability issues have those been resolved. What about the player organization stuff? I think there's enough time between now and maybe even the winter to resolve most of those and make the winter season a possibility. But things have moved so slowly from the people in charge in college football that to expect them to move quickly, I might be expecting a lot.
As you were talking about not needing to go too deeply into that stuff, I was just doing some mental math. Yeah, we probably have about 80 morning shows between now and the start of a theoretical fall camp, fall/winter camp for the, potential spring season. So yeah, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that stuff. One of the big questions right now that may sort of impact what that hypothetical spring season could look like is what's going to happen this fall. Are the SEC and ACC and Big 12 actually going to play? Thursday night, there was another step in the wrong direction. The NCAA announced that all fall championships were canceled. Now, the NCAA does not have oversight over the college football playoff. So that's basically everything other than the college football playoff is now canceled. So there will be no fall soccer, there will be no fall field hockey, or any of those other sports. So that kind of goes in line with a pretty steady drip of information that's been coming into sources for a number of Buckeye Scoop staffers. Our Mark Givler just wrote a piece on it last night. You can find that at buckeyescoop.com. But the information has all been that it doesn't sound like it's very likely that those conferences are going to play a full season, and fairly likely that they won't play at all this fall at this point. Like that sure seems like how it's trending. And, there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But one of them is, hey, the lawyers that stopped the Big Ten and the Pac-12, guess what? Other conferences have lawyers too. So, and they have doctors, and they're all looking at the same stuff. And I think the trend is not in a great direction right now. That's sort of the sense that I think a lot of people are starting to get. And if they don't play, I mean, it certainly makes some kind of a spring season potentially a little more viable for the Big Ten and Pac-12 if all 5 of those Power 5 conferences are playing at the same time.
Yeah, because you're going to have more people who want to play. And the more people you have that want to play in the winter or the spring, the more likely you're going to get that. You're going to have less pushback. And it would just – the momentum is not going in college football's favor right now for fall football, and to have the NCAA come out and say no fall championships, it's going to be difficult for college football programs, universities, let's remember, to ignore that and put teams on the field. Now, we know that college football programs have ignored certain aspects of the NCAA forever. Sometimes they get caught for it. Sometimes they get punished for when they get caught. Other times they just, kind of like don't answer the phone when the NCAA calls, and the NCAA has no power to stop them. There's no voicemail box. It's completely full or whatever. They haven't set it up, I guess. And so, but it just feels like to go against the NCAA here, maybe, Tom, would be, we keep hearing about how the Power 5 is going to break away from the NCAA. This might be when we're at that breaking point. Do these 3 break away, or do they side with the fact that, okay, we would look really, really bad if we did this?
Yeah, I mean, we talked to Bill Bender yesterday on the morning show about Nebraska potentially thinking about maybe breaking away and doing something, and they ultimately ended up deciding not to do that and sticking with the Big Ten. That would certainly. I would anticipate that would certainly be where those other 3 leagues end up. But, this is 2020. Literally anything is possible. So, Tony, thank you for joining us. You can find a much longer conversation between Tony and I exploring some of these issues in a lot more detail on the episode of Buckeye Weekly that dropped on Thursday afternoon. You can just search Buckeye Weekly or Buckeye Scoop on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, to find this and all of our great shows on the Buckeye Scoop Podcast Network. Have a great weekend, you guys. I promise next weekend probably won't be as crazy. Next week probably won't be as crazy as this one. Probably. I hope. Maybe. We'll see. Yeah, Tony's making a concerned face. I guess I probably can't guarantee that. Either way, thank you guys for listening. We will talk to you Monday.